Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Not Your Average Joe Show. Hey, if you're feeling frustrated at the level of progress that you're making on your most important goals already in 2021, or if you're feeling stuck and you need greater clarity on how to move beyond obstacles and challenges that are in your life right now, then this episode is for you. I've got my good friend, Sam Silverstein, with us. He's an internationally acclaimed consultant, coach, and business advisor, and he's the recognized global authority on accountability and leadership. I can't wait for you guys to hear what he has to share today. I'll be right back with you.
This is the Not Your Average Joe Show, where each week we bring you sales, marketing, and mindset strategies you need to get to your next level. And now, here's your host, international business mentor, Joe Soto.
Yes, we've got Sam Silverstein with us today. Welcome, Sam.
Hey, it's great to be here, Joe.
Hey, Sam, we should call this the Not Your Average Sam Show. Do you want to know why?
Why is that?
Because my middle name is Samuel.
Wow, I never knew that, and I've known you for quite a while. It's interesting. You've been keeping things from me, haven't
yes.
you? Yes.
And 2 of my 9 children have Sam as their name. So Samantha, my daughter, and then Denver, my youngest, is Denver Samuel.
Oh wow, how cool is that?
Yep. So Sam is one of my favorite names. So I'm glad you're here. You are not the average Sam.
I'm trying not to be. I am trying not to be.
I'm so glad you're here. I know we've got a lot of ground to cover, and you, my friend, when we first met, you had like one book out, which was the No More Excuses book. This is like the original first edition. And then since then, you've written like 10 other books.
Yeah.
You've been on a roll, man, this last decade.
Yeah, it's been crazy. We've discovered some things, and we saw what sort of impact it was having on people and in their organizations.
Yeah.
And the more feedback we were getting, the more we leaned into it. And so, yeah, it's awesome. I'm really excited with what we've done. I'm excited about what's coming because we have so many things in the pipe coming. So it's a good time, Joe.
Well, I'm naming this show No More Excuses. You were one of the first inspirations for me in kind of honing this self-responsibility mindset. And I'm so appreciative of it, and really excited for the stuff that you've been putting out and the stuff that you've got coming down the road. But today's episode, we're just going to give some really awesome information for our guests here. I'm going to start with some accountability stuff because you're like the expert on accountability, but I want to really talk about some of the stuff that's in your latest book. And I think it has, it'll resonate with a lot of people who are on here today. So as you know, my audience is a mix of entrepreneurs. Then we got agencies and we got consultants, we got coaches on here. And people from all different walks of life.
People.
We've got people. You talk about accountability not being a consequence, and this is the number one thing that stood out for me in this book, by the way, which is what turned me on to your work and you, which was you say that accountability is your competitive advantage. It's your advantage, and I love that take on it. Can you explain a little bit about what you mean by that, so we can lighten the load of what people think is like the stuffy way they describe the word accountability? You've got a much better way to describe it as a competitive advantage.
You know what, Joe? That might be the last question we answer today. By the time we get through the conversation,
they'll understand.
So much we've discovered so much since that book even was written. Here's how we see accountability. The reason we struggle with accountability is because we don't know what it is. The reason society struggles with accountability is because everything we've been taught about accountability is wrong. Accountability is not a way of doing. Accountability is a way of thinking, and specifically, it's how we think about people. Accountability is keeping your commitments to people. Accountability is we're responsible for things, but we're accountable to people. And since people are involved, it's always going to be a higher level of thinking. And while, we're going to have to come back and have like half a dozen master classes, Joe. But when I say keeping your commitments to people, commitment is no matter what. But the commitments I'm talking about are not the tactical commitments. I'm talking about the relational commitments. And those are like a commitment to live the values, a commitment to stand by you when all hell breaks loose, a commitment to help lead you to your potential to be your very best. It's these commitments that we make in our lives that help people become their best. And in the process, what happens is we nurture a relationship. They would rather die than let us down because we're accountable to them first.
Love that. Love that. And then let's dive into some of the principles in this book, because I think you may not consider yourself necessarily a personal growth expert because of the labels that the world puts on you. And I know you help companies and corporations around the world. And you help people, you help individual coaches, you help consultants get more transformative results with their clients. You help coaches, help their clients get more transformational results in their businesses. And you do it because it's some of these principles are honed with what you talk about in the book Pivot. You talk about 3 big questions. So can we dive into that? You say,
let's do it.
I have on here, what are the 3 big questions, and walk us through them, because I think as simple as they are, they're so needed right now in the time that we're in. And by the way, you wrote this book this year, and you were one of the first people to coin this term, I think, before it became popularized. And now everyone's saying, you're pivoting, but you wrote the book on it. So let's talk about it.
Exactly. Well, actually, I just finished a book on March 6th and sent it to my publisher. And on March 28th, I called my publisher and I said, there is a need right now for a book. And this is what it is. And he says, Sam, I got to, before you even get into this, you need to know we're not taking on any new projects right now. I mean, everything's closed down. Amazon's not taking shipments. I said, well, let me tell you what the book is. He says, of course. I told him what the book was. He says, we'll do it. I said, when do you want the manuscript? He says, how about tonight? I said, no, that's not going to happen, but I'll have it for you by June 1st. And so literally started April 1, finished on June 1. Pivot is a book that's not about a way of doing, it's a way of thinking. People that use the term pivot, we hear this all the time, Joe. I need to pivot what we're doing. We need to go in a different direction. Well, it's not about changing what you do. It's about changing how you think.
Love that.
Action follows belief. When we understand what it is that we're thinking, then we can connect the result we're getting to that way of thinking. If we're not getting the result we want, it's going to connect back to a way of thinking that's not working. If we're getting the result we want, it's probably connecting back to a way of thinking that is working. So in the book Pivot, we look at 3 specific questions that connect to the way that we think, because if we can ask and answer these questions, then what happens is we'll get a certain clarity of thinking. And we'll be able to, as I like to put it, seize opportunities and walk through that door, because there's opportunities that are coming to us all the time. We just have to be able to walk through the door. That's what pivoting is, but we can't walk through the door if we don't have the right way of thinking.
So it's a mindset shift. And the entire book is, if I can get people to see this and to understand that it's a mindset, then the rest will come much more naturally. The pivoting of the action of pivot will actually come much more naturally. So let's talk about well, first let's back up a little bit, right? Because we're in the middle of we're hopefully we're towards the end of the pandemic, but you wrote this early on and saw the need for the mindset shift, right? So what were these questions, like they just fall out of a tree for you, or how did you come up with your 3 big questions?
Back in the end of January, the beginning of February, I was leaving town. I'd just gotten off the phone with a client, actually, and I'm supposed to speak at a meeting of about 500 people for a major international corporation. And I always ask the client, what's a home run look like to you? What do you want me to do to make this look like a home run? And the guy gives me the same answer I get every time. It's unbelievable. He says, give us 3 good points and motivate my people. Well, normally I only have one. Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking my program's got dozens of points in there. I'm like Mr. Content, because I just believe that there needs to be a lot of content. Normally I have one call with a client. With this client, we had 3. I have no idea why we had 3. And literally just like 3 days before I'm leaving town, same thing. Give them 3 points. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, what if I narrowed it down to 3 things that I wanted them to focus on and frame this whole speech around 3 things? What would those 3 things be? And I started thinking and thinking. Literally, Joe, I prayed over it. What are those 3 things? And nothing was happening. I got on the airplane and I flew to Atlanta, where I was going to deliver the speech. And I went to the hotel, and right late afternoon, the night before the program, all of a sudden, it was as if somebody was speaking into my ear 3 specific questions. And I said, that's the answer. That's what not just what they need, that's what we all need. And I did something that night that I hadn't done in 28 years as a professional speaker. I rewrote my speech the night before the program. Now, nobody does that. That's insane.
No, right.
But I did that, and I built this program around these 3 big questions, and they went nuts the next day. And then ever since then, it's been a part of my program, and we wrote the book, and we've helped hundreds, if not thousands, of people implement these 3 questions in their life, in their business, in their organization, and it's been huge.
Your questions are simple, and they give clarity to something I was saying when this all the crisis was kind of hitting, and people were changing how they were going to meet with people virtually and everything else. And there's a state of fear that clients had. So I saw a lot of agencies and consultants and coaches in my world losing clients because their clients were fearful and they didn't have tools or a toolkit to be able to go to them with, or even or quite honestly, more importantly, a mindset that they could share with the clients that would help them get clarity. And that really, I always say fear is because fear tends to stem from not being clear on what the end of that tunnel looks like. So if people can't see the end of the tunnel, they're afraid of what's on the other side. If you can't see the other side of a pandemic, you get fearful. You don't know when it's going to end. You don't know how long it's going to draw out. Your questions give clarity. I think, sometimes the power is in the simplicity of these questions. And one of them is on what you focus on. And I think people, they lose focus really easily. So how do you keep it? Like, what do you do to get people on track?
So here's the thing. And you talked about fear. There's 2 sides to this whole focus conversation. What do you focus on? Well, do you focus on what you can control, or do you focus on what you can't control? Because when you focus on what you can't control, you stop dead in your tracks, you make excuses, and you bring massive amounts of fear into your life. And so that's what was happening at the beginning of the pandemic. People were focused on what they couldn't control. What can't you control? Well, you can't control a virus, not in that moment, okay?
Right.
You can't control what's going on in the economy. You can't control what's happening with businesses. You can't control what government, the choices that they are making. And so those people that focused on all that stuff that they can't control got bogged down. Now, what about the people that focused on something else, like what they could control? What did they do? Well, I'll tell you what they did. They went out onto the internet. They went onto YouTube. They started looking at what streamers have been doing for years, and they gained insights. And all of a sudden, they took this virtual world, which is, to quote a friend of mine, been gifted to us, and made it happen. Because they took the technology that was out there, because they focused on what they could control. I can build a studio. I can call people. I can do virtual work with clients, one-on-one, in large groups, whatever it is. The technology's here. So the question is, what are you focused on? Are you focused on what you can control, or are you focused on what you cannot control? All right. Now, the other side of this, which connects to the question that you asked, deals with mindfulness. In other words, we are faced with decision points throughout the day. And many times we'll go, oh, you know what? I wish I had done such and such. And basically what's happened is we fall into the trap of hindsight is 20/20. The key is to notice the decision points when they present themselves. Now, no one bats 1,000 on this, but if you notice the decision points the choice points, when they present themselves, then we can choose how are we going to act. Are we going to act with abundance, or are we going to act with scarcity? Are we going to act with gratitude, or are we going to act with entitlement? These are all things that come into play, but we have to train ourselves to notice those choice points that we are facing throughout the day.
Man, I love that. We could be done right now, and that's more than enough value for everyone to chew on and to, quite honestly, rewind and re-listen to, because you've given a new way to think about this, starting with what you're focusing. If you're focusing on things you can control versus not, and you're right that you induce fear, not just in yourself but in others. Right? If you're a leader of an organization, imagine how important what you're focusing on has this ripple effect through your organization, through your company, with your employees, with people that maybe hire virtual teams and so on. You're the conduit.
Yeah, exactly. You're the leader. So what happens is, if you're living with fear, they're living with fear. If you're focused on what you can't control, they're focused on what they can't control. Because where the head goes, the body flows. All eyes on you, the leader. That's why it's critical that the leader invest the time, the energy, the resources to master this, because you cannot give what you don't have. And as a leader, you need to be able to give to your people to help them be the best they can be. That's accountable leadership.
And it's role modeling this, right? So this is why I encourage people to have their own show or have their own podcast, so they can be a voice of something to focus on that's in the right direction, and they can lead their own movements. You've got the accountability movement. I mean, you're role modeling everything that you're talking about. I'm going to widen this so everybody can see his studio. So he's got this, you pivoted and had this mindset. You chose what you're focusing on. You got a beautiful studio, and because you were used to traveling how often per year?
A lot,
right? I mean, you're on an airplane at least monthly.
Yeah.
And you're traveling and you're speaking at different organizations, not just around the country, but sometimes around the world. You've been a president of the National Speakers Association, for goodness sakes. And you know that speaker world got completely jolted, got disrupted. And you are modeling for your peers how you navigate those waters. And I think that's extremely admirable. And I love, Justin says, choice points. I love it. He's absolutely right. Pointing that out as these decision points, as choice points, fantastic. Let's talk a little bit about belief. And okay. you hinted at it earlier. You said belief drives the action. So the action follows the belief.
Right. And so the first.
I know we're backing into the question. Yeah,
that's okay. It's good. It's all good as long as we get there. That first question is, what do you believe? Now, when I ask people that question, it blows their brains. What do I believe about what? Well, what do you believe about everything? Because if action follows belief, then it absolutely matters what you believe. And it means it's critically important for us to be a part of this process, this thought process that we have. We need to constantly be evaluating what it is that we're thinking. And so, what do you believe about the world? What do you believe about your potential? What do you believe about the people around you? Look, as a leader, if you believe that all your people are the problem, you're going to treat them differently than if you believe that all your people can come together and solve the problem. So what you believe is critical. 3 specific things, because of time, I would say we need to know what we believe. Our beliefs are inward facing, but our values are outward facing. We need to know what our values are because we connect through the values. The second thing is we need to know what our unique purpose is. And our unique purpose is always what brings us joy in the service of others. It's not our unique purpose to make $1 million, to drive a fancy car, live in a big home. Those can be goals. That's fine, but that's not your purpose. It's like our purpose in business is not to make money. I hear this all the time. What's your purpose? To make money? No, it's not. Look, as human beings, we need to breathe to stay alive, but our purpose is not to breathe. A business has to make money to stay in existence, but that's not the purpose of the business.
Great analogy.
And then the third thing that we need to know is what is our mission? Now, your mission is your purpose. It's like 2 sides of a coin. Purpose is inward facing. Mission is outward facing. And so your mission is your what, your purpose is your why, and your values are your how. And when you align that, That's when the magic happens.
You're one of the first people I've ever heard explain values and beliefs in the way that you do. But let's real quick, for the interest of time, let's tackle the last question about which is centered around what you're committed to. What do you mean? Let's talk about commitments. The dreaded C word. What do I have to commit to?
Joe, you're killing me. That's 2 hours. That's
I know.
2 hours.
I know. It's okay. We can go a few extra minutes.
All right. Commitments. Here's what I want you to think about. First of all, what is a commitment? A commitment is no matter what. It's not an if, it's not a maybe, it's not if something better comes along. There is no gray. It's black and white. A commitment is no matter what. When you know I'm committed to you, you want to be committed to me. Leaders make commitments to their people and keep them. That's what creates loyalty. That's what creates accountability. Now, here's what we need to focus on. There's tactical commitments and relational commitments. Tactical commitments are spoken. Tactical commitment. I'll get you the report tomorrow afternoon by 3:00. I'll be there at your house at 6:00 tonight to pick you up for the game. I'll take the trash out. They're spoken. They're tactical. Tactical commitments produce productivity. Productivity is good. Nothing wrong with tactical commitments. But tactical commitments do not produce accountability. The other kind of commitments, relational commitments that I touched on before, a commitment, and there's 10 of them, a commitment to the truth, a commitment to a good name, a commitment to live the values, a commitment to stand by you when all hell breaks loose, a commitment to it's all of us, which means if you fail, I fail. If you succeed, I succeed. Those commitments are unspoken. Yeah, they're in there. We make those commitments and we keep them. And when we do, through our actions, the people around us know that we've got their back. We're committed to the relationship. We're committed to their success. And then you know what happens? They're committed to ours. And so it's making and keeping those unspoken relational commitments that build that accountability. Now, here's what happens. Relational commitments go towards accountability. When you build accountability first in your life through modeling it and then inspiring it in others, increased accountability will spin off an increase in productivity. So increased productivity does not yield accountability, but when you put your time and energy in building accountability, what happens is you also get an increase in productivity.
Wow, this is like a rapid fire masterclass on an entirely new way to think about accountability, and the role this plays in your life. And this is what's so refreshing, everyone, about Sam Silverstein and his work, is that it's all one big mindset shift. And once you start shifting the mindset and you open yourself up to the different, like the 10 commitments he's talking about, and all these different life guiding principles is really what they are. Not just business guiding principles. These are life guiding principles. This is applicable whether you're a solopreneur working as a solo business coach or entrepreneur in your business, or if you've got a large team working for a Fortune 100 company. It's applicable, but also I think it's to us personally, fathers, wives, we're in relationships. It's got that personal application to get that stuff right first. There's no work-life balance, in my opinion. It's just figuring out, like you just got done talking about, what is your purpose. And when all that's aligned, then you're doing as a result of what you believe. Last thing, if we can wrap this up, because this is one of my favorite ways of thinking about this. You talk about.
I thought we were.
I know we're supposed to be wrapping up.
I thought we were doing a 24-hour gig here.
I know. I wish we could, but here's the thing. I guarantee you, everyone's going to want to have you back, and that's my goal. Is that people want you to come back, and we'll come back and we'll deeper dive into this type of stuff.
Great.
And you say, just real quick for people who are on here who tend to be the excuse makers, you talk about excuses being expensive, right?
Okay.
And
we have to get back to your original question, Joe.
Say it again.
If we're going to run out of time, we have to get back to your original question, which is, why is accountability your competitive advantage? So do you want to go back there?
Let's do you have time? Can we do it?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's jump in.
The reason is, look, accountability is built on a relationship. If you're talking about relationships, keeping your commitments to people, leading them to their potential to be their best, being accountable to them and inspiring them to be accountable.
Yeah.
What can be more important? And what happens is, when you master this and when you're living it, it shows up on the bottom line, and it's what separates you. there's far too many companies out there with leaders. There's far too many people that aren't living an accountable life. And when you're living an accountable life and building accountability into the culture of your organization and the fabric of who you are and what you're doing, then it sets you apart, and you will achieve beyond what you could have ever imagined achieving. The goals that you set for this past year will be so small by comparison to what you do, because you'll be driving everything through the lens of accountability. And that, because of what it produces, is why accountability is your competitive advantage. Everyone has products and services. They're all the same for the most part, but accountability is what will differentiate you. And that's
I
the answer
love
to
this.
your
It's a
question.
differentiation strategy for every single person listening. Sam, this has been 100% pure gold for my audience. This is one of those episodes that I personally want to rewind and re-listen to, because I knew I wasn't going to be able to take notes, because I've talked with you before. And I know how fast you can run through these principles because it's ingrained in the fabric of what you do. But I'm going to take a ton of notes when I go back through this. Here's the thing: you challenge people essentially to have more accountable lives and to be accountable to other people. And you've given people a fresh new way to think of a word that they so haphazardly just use in everyday life and take it real, not just serious, but to put it into everything that you do. You, like you say, it is the backbone to getting results with clients. It is your competitive advantage in the marketplace. It is tied to the bottom line when it's looked at and acted upon in the way that you teach. Absolute gold. Jill says she needs to watch the replay and take more notes. Great show.
Hey, Jill.
I agree. Accountability is your competitive advantage. That's your mantra now, Justin. And I appreciate you guys being on here listening. Sam, I appreciate you. Are you going to come back?
You bet.
Yeah, to the Not Your Average Sam show. To the Not Your Average Sam show. That's what we're going to call it now. The next time I'm going to have new channel art, and we're going to call it the Not Your Average Sam show the next time you're here. So Justin's asking if you have a course, because he needs a course after he reads the books. Justin, you get on Clubhouse a lot. You should invite Sam to be on Clubhouse with you, because Sam is filling the waters of Clubhouse right now. I know you're in there. In fact, that's how we got reconnected, Sam.
Right.
So,
I mean, we've known each other for years, but our paths crossed back on Clubhouse. Yeah. And let's connect. There's courses. There's all kinds of great stuff. I can help you take this deeper.
Yeah. So make sure you go to samsilverstein.com. I'll put it in the show notes as well. I'll put the links. There's a lot of, I mean, quite honestly, there's not just one book that people should own of yours. It's all of the books, because they all build upon the next one. But I thank you for your time, your energy, your passion, and more importantly, your expertise to pour out here to my audience. Sam, if you're listening to this and it's your first or it's your 30th time, I appreciate you sharing this out, sharing it with friends, sharing it with people that you care and love about, sharing it with colleagues and people that you know this can impact their business. And until the next time, next week, let's say goodbye to Sam. Sam, thanks again for being here.
My pleasure. It's been an honor.
Tune in next week for the Not Your Average Joe Show with international business mentor Joe Soto.